समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा?
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Davos this year is different from any other as yet. Any other I can say, in the sense that this is the strongest presence of the Western right at World Economic Forum. They've been leaders of the right in the past. Republicans, as I mentioned, the Bushes have been there. Trump has been there also once. From United Kingdom, leaders of the right, conservatives have been there. But this is the first time that you have this constellation of leaders of the right. And also, this represents the fact that a new alliance of hard right is coming up in the Western world. A new alliance of popular and populist hard right, which is getting elected, which is getting electoral legitimacy. So who's the leader? Obviously, you would say Trump is the leader, and Trump is speaking at World Economic Forum as I record this, and this will go into late into the night Indian time. But in some ways, the leading light in this, or the spokesperson of this group, is Javier Milei. Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, who's neither left nor right. He's actually libertarian, leaning in many ways on the right, but a libertarian who actually wants almost no government. He basically says the government should guarantee your life, liberty and property and get out of everything else in your lives. He won his election in Argentina against the runoff play. He won his election, promised to cut his government into half, which he has done already. In fact, he was campaigning with a chainsaw, saying that he will cut the government into half, and that's what he's done. He's cut half his ministries. His economy is looking up. At least some indicators are looking up. Inflation, his debt situation, Argentina is servicing its debt, which is something it has struggled to do for 100 years. So he came in to speak this time at Davos, and he laid out the Western rights agenda, what might be called the Western rights agenda. And you can see that this agenda is basically structured against what is called as wokeism, or the wokeism monster, as this group would like to call it. And he in fact laid out in his 29-minute speech, which I will talk about. I will give you takeaways from his speech and some interpretations and analysis. In the speech, he said that when I came to speak here last year, I was a lonely voice. And you guys laughed at me. You guys would not have taken me seriously. After all, who was I? I was representing a country with a 100-year history of economic crisis, of not being able to pay its debts, etc. And he says that's because for 100 years we were infected by this socialist virus, and that's why we had deficit, we had inflation, we had no growth, and because we were so weak, because we were in economic crisis for 100 years, in global conflicts also we hardly had a voice, because if you are not a strong nation, you cannot have a voice. However, this time when I come to speak, I am not alone, because you can see that there are others who are speaking the same language, in a way that an alliance has come up, and then he counts some of them. And he lists his allies. He lists his allies in this new universe of ideas, new universe of hard right ideas. So he says there is Bukele, that is Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, who was, by the way, present at Trump's inauguration, to the marvelous, fierce, I quote him, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Viktor Orban in Hungary, Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, and if this goes on, by next year, if he's invited, and chances are that he'll be invited again because he's such a star draw, he had a full hall at Davos today, and he'll be invited in spite of the fact that he spent quite a bit of his time in his short speech attacking World Economic Forum, saying that organizations like this, supranational organizations, many across the world, including this forum, have been promoting these woke ideas. So if he comes back and speaks, maybe he'll be able to add Marine Le Pen of France, Nigel Farage of UK, or maybe his successor if Elon Musk succeeds in carrying out a coup in his UK Reform Party as well, and also Alice Weidel of the German AfD, the German hard right party, Alternative for Germany. So all of that shows that now there is a new alliance, there is a new group rising in the world. That's the reason I say this Davos is very different from the usual one, where there is a lot of political correctness. So you see this constellation of new leaders of the hard right in the Western world, right? And they all have the same message. They all have the same message. They are attacking wokeism, they are attacking the foundations, they are attacking political correctness, they are attacking gender politics, they are attacking environmentalism. It's been a long time since we saw such unanimity among the most popular leaders of the Western world. Probably for the first time in about 30 years back when globalization became something that everybody talked about. Now this is the era of hard right thinking, and this is the era of fighting wokeness. That word wokeism, usually hyphenated either with the virus or cancer, there was always some adjective added to it. That featured several times in his speech. So let me go over the high points of his speech. He says, I speak at this point when the West has gone astray. Argentina is correcting itself, but the West has gone astray because it's also been infected with the socialist virus for too long. He said, what is it that a government is supposed to do? Only protect your life, liberty, and personal property. But socialism has made the government increase its size, and a bureaucratic empire has come up instead. I'm paraphrasing this. He says, what is Argentina doing? Argentina is now following the path of fiscal responsibility and keeping its commitments and obligations and telling the people the truth. He says the Western world is suffering. He's addressing the Western world. He's not bothered about the rest of the world. He says the Western world has suffered under the absolute global hegemony of the woke left, who took over the politics, educational institutions, supranational organizations, NGOs, media, and also Davos, World Economic Forum at Davos. And they are the ones who've caused all these distortions, and they brought in abhorrent ideologies, and this is now our moral duty to dismantle ideological wokeism and their sinister agenda. This is strong language. And he says there are four kinds of people present here. One who say no, these new ideas of the hard right must be resisted. The second would accept it grudgingly because there is no choice. The third would embrace it because they are convinced. And fourth, he says, are people like us who believed in it and who promoted it, who fought elections to provide legitimacy to these ideas. And that is what has led to a situation where he says that he has the strength, his ideas have the strength to defeat this cancer of abhorrent ideas which have overtaken the government, NGOs, media, academia, and global organizations. Again, he goes on to say, talking about Argentina, that we were infected with interesting words and interesting construction also. We were infected with the ghost of Western Christmas yet to come. The ghost of Western Christmas yet to come, because we had already experienced what you were going through and we knew what is the outcome. What he's trying to say is that Argentina had already seen 100 years of socialism, and now we saw the West was going through that socialist phase because of wokeism, and we knew what will happen, which means the result will be a disaster. We had known the outcome, and that outcome is now here, and that's why the West is, and it's correcting itself, he says, because new alliances of liberty are coming up, which must dismantle the ideological edifice of sickly wokeism. That is how he sets up his agenda. I told you that he's mostly addressing the West because he sees himself also as a Western leader. And Argentina might have had socialism, but they were never particularly a liberal society in a classical Western sense. So he is riding that as well. So he says the West represents the pinnacle of human glory. And this came as a combination of values which were Judeo-Christian, that is Jewish and Christian, Judeo-Christian, and Greco-Roman. With that, the West built itself. Yet, he says, by 1800, until 1800 AD, global economy was not so successful. People were not rich. There was a lot of poverty. He says, see the change that's come in after 1800 because a new thing came in, and that new thing was capitalism. So added to the principles of Judeo-Christian religiosity or spirituality and Greco-Roman philosophy and political thinking, political thought, now was added capitalism, and that led to massive growth and massive improvement in humankind. He says from 1800 to now, human per capita incomes have risen 20 times in constant values, 20 times, while the population, human population has gone up 8 times. All of that happened because of capitalism. Capitalism added to other classical Western values, religious as well as philosophical, Judeo-Christian and Greco-Roman. 90% people of the world were lifted out of poverty because of capitalism. And principles of this capitalism, this system were respect for life, liberty and property. This had unleashed man's creative capacity, and that led to free trade, free speech, freedom of religion, and then on to pioneering spirit of new enterprise, of which he says Elon Musk is a very good example. This was capitalism. And how is capitalism defined? What did capitalism ride? It rode savings, investment, labor and hard work, which resulted in increasing productivity. In fact, for most workers, it increased productivity by 1,000 times and more. And this helped the humankind defy the Malthusian trap. Malthusian trap was that population will keep on growing and one day it will become unsustainable and humanity will destroy itself because there will just be too many human beings to feed. In fact, the Malthusian argument keeps on featuring in his speech again and again. Then he says, next point, that while all this was going on, the going was good, a collectivist power rose. That is communism. A collectivist power rose with centralized planning and brought in a socialist agenda. What that meant was it operated insidiously, and I'm quoting him, insidiously under liberal paradigm. But it used the coercive power of the state as enshrined in Marxist ideology, and started the business of taking away wealth earned by people through enterprise and distributing it to others by using state power. That is communism. He says this also defied the basic principle that equality before law is what you need. Under the new belief system, that is the communist/socialist system, equality before law was not enough because because of the belief that there are hidden inequalities which must be addressed. And the idea of addressing these became a goldmine for those seeking bureaucratic omnipotence. How do you define it in one word? It is wokeism. Once again, he says the fundamental rights were life, liberty and property. These were negative fundamental rights. What it means is nobody should be able to take it from you. Not that you will be given this, but nobody should be able to take it from you. These were negative fundamental rights. These were now also replaced with positive fundamental rights, and these were fundamental rights in the area of desires, education, housing, free internet, free televised football, I'm quoting him, free theatre, free cosmetic treatment, all of which somebody has to pay for, and that somebody was the state. This started the infinite expansion of the abhorrent state. That's a quote, infinite expansion of the abhorrent state. The upshot from this is that feminism, diversity, gender ideology, inclusion, environmentalism, all of these are parts of the same stuff. In fact, the expression he uses is, all of these are heads of the same beast. His next point of hate, and I'm sorry if I've got this spot, that was Mr. Miku, who came to say hello as we started this. You saw him, and I think you've known him since he was a tiny puppy. He and the rest were a bit shy, so they didn't come in. Anyway, back to Milei and his pet hates. Now he comes to his next pet hate, which is radical feminism. He says radical feminism has put one half of humanity against the other, that is women against the men, as if the two are not equal. He says in some countries now you have a situation that even murder is politicized to the extent that if somebody kills a woman, murders a woman, it's called femicide. And punishment for murdering a woman is higher than punishment for murdering a man, as if the life of one gender has more value than the other. There is talk of wage disparity, which he tosses out as nonsense. He said, how can there be wage disparity if both do the same job? Why aren't you thinking that men perhaps are going for better paying jobs? Why aren't you asking, how come it's mostly the men who work as plumbers? How come it's mostly the men who get murdered, who get robbed? And definitely it's almost entirely the men who die fighting the wars. If you raise any of these points, he says, what do I do? I'm raising these points, but if you raise any of these points, you are immediately dismissed as misogynist, whereas all I'm talking about is equality, which brings us to his next point of hate, which is what he describes as bloody, murderous, sinister, radical environmentalism. He said that we should live in a clean environment is a matter of common sense. Nobody says that we should not live in a clean environment. Nobody wants to live in a landfill. That's his line, exact line. However, he says the idea should be preserving the environment for human enjoyment, which is now being countered by fanatical environmentalism, which believes that humans are a cancer. Humans are a cancer who are basically responsible for environmental damage, and humans are a cancer that needs to be eradicated. And also economic development equals a crime against nature. The fact is, that's what he's saying, the fact is that the universe has had 5 abrupt temperature cycles. Through 4 of them, human beings did not even exist. But when we raise this point, he says, we are called flat earthers and thereby dismissed. His next point, he says it is no coincidence therefore that this bloody, murderous, I think bloody and murderous has appeared several times in his speech. I'm sharing a transcript with you, but also we've published the entire speech uncut on our YouTube page. I will share a link of that also with you in English. And that's why he says this bloody, murderous Malthusian agenda has been enforced on people through ideas of population control, and this has been taken to such an extreme, and that's where he attacks abortion as well. It's been taken to such an extreme that today's population growth rates are becoming worrying. He doesn't say declining, but that's what he's referring to. Next, as you would expect, LGBT. LGBT, you've legitimized the idea that a man could be woman, a woman could be man, depending on self-perception, that somebody could be born in one gender but believe that they are of a different gender, and that is to be given legitimacy. He says we've reached a situation where a man gets into a boxing ring and kills a woman. Is that all right? It didn't happen quite like that. Imam Khalif did not kill the other one. The other one went out crying, and there was a big controversy. The Olympic Committee said that there was no problem with the gender, etc., etc. But he's referring to that Algerian boxer Imam Khalif's gold medal at Paris Olympics. So he says a man steps into women's boxing ring and kills a woman in a bout. Another man dresses as a woman and lives in the women's section of a prison and rapes another woman there. Then he gives you the example of 2 gays, a famous example he says, which has been noted all over the world. 2 gays who are a couple. They've been jailed for 100 years for abusing and filming their adopted children. This is why he says that I would describe this as an extreme form of outright child abuse and pedophilia if you say that your gender is determined by self-perception. And that is what Trump has done also with his executive order, saying that the government, US government, recognizes only 2 genders. He says healthy children are being irreversibly harmed through hormone treatment and mutilation, If families don't give their consent, that state agents come in and they say they are acting in the best interest of these children, as if five-year-olds know what is in their best interest. And he says, if you raise any questions about this, they cover it with victimhood and accuse you of homophobia, transphobia. And if you question it, they cover themselves with victimhood and they accuse you of homophobia and transphobia. Next, he raises a point which will find quite a bit of buzz in India as well. He said, in the name of diversity, you brought in quotas. In the name of diversity, you brought in quotas. That is against merit and that is against excellence. If everybody is equal, if law makes everybody equal, why should there be quotas? Basically, why should there be DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion? The law is the same for everybody. And the most meritorious and the most excellent will rise. Next, he says wokeism has distorted the immigration debate. This is very important. He says all successful societies in the West are based on immigration. Argentina as well as the US, he says. But that immigration was based on merit, that was based on our national interest, where we imported or we brought in the most talented people from across the world to come and work for us. On the other hand, the immigration that's now taking place is mass immigration from failed states, which is not determined by our national interest, but it is supposed to be determined by our national guilt. Because supposedly the Western world, the Western countries created the problems in those countries to begin with. They must now redeem themselves by allowing all these people to come in. All these people come in, they abuse, assault and kill our own people. And the main reason they do so is because they do not follow one religion. So that's an attack on Islam as well, obviously. They do not follow one religion. He says this amounts to mass suicide on the part of the Western world. So this is the most vicious attack on immigration that I have seen so far. Trump has attacked immigration, Marine Le Pen has attacked immigration, Orban has attacked immigration, but in terms of just articulation and choice of words, this is the most vicious attack on immigration. And he says, if we raise questions about it, we are called racist, xenophobic, even Nazis. So deep has this distortion gone, he says, that now they, as in the woke community, even question biological sex. There are state-funded self-perception mutilations of the human body. And these human bodies which get mutilated like this, then they go through trauma all their lives, and many of them will need psychological treatment through their lives, which will also be paid for by the state. This is also helped along by the domination, by the woke domination, he says, of the faculties of elite universities across the Western world. Once again, you can see what is the agenda of this new alliance of hard right, popular hard right leaders is. How did we go so wrong in the West, he says? He says because after Second World War, we pretty much had peace, and peace has made us weak. The absence of an obvious enemy of fight has, with no adversaries to defeat, we become lazy. And we thought that these new ideas were like some golden calf that had to be preserved. In conclusion, he says, what future are we going to have if we are teaching our kids to hate our past? Institutions like these, that means World Economic Forum at Davos, institutions like these promote sinister and murderous ideologies where the rich are maligned and arbitrary distribution is promoted. That is, take from the rich and arbitrarily distribute to the rest. I don't mind if there is distribution to people who really need, but these governments also give giveaways to large corporates, large foundations, stuff like that. All that is wrong, because this is an effect of sterile and sclerotic socialism. Sterile and sclerotic socialism, which is promoted through indoctrination centers, universities. Wokeism, he says, is nothing but a conspiracy by the state to just expand its size for the bureaucracies to become bigger and omnipotent. And that has to be fought now. That is the new politics. What the world needs, or the Western world in this case, is a drastic reduction of the state, drastic reduction of all supranational organizations, and confining, limiting the role of the state again to life, liberty and property. And once again, limiting the role of the state to protection of life, liberty and property, nothing else. Nothing else. And this is a case of, and this is a war of the free citizens versus the political class. The script of the last 40 years has run out, he says. The further back you look, and he quotes Winston Churchill, the further back you look, the further forward you will see. If you do that, he says, you can make the West great again. So basically what Javier Milei has done is, he's given you the agenda of the hard right for the Western world, which will have impact on the rest of the world as well, what you call as Global South, on India, on everybody. In the West itself, for the liberal community, for liberal politics, this poses a challenge that they haven't faced as yet since the Second World War. This is a very big challenge, and I think it's very interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see if they are up to the task of fighting back, because they have quite an uphill climb now.